When Lena Vale handed a bowl of lemon pasta to the most dangerous man in Lower Manhattan, she didn't know she was signing her own death warrant. Damian Viscari's enemies had spent years trying to kill him through his food, and now she'd become the first person he trusted to feed him in a decade. One meal changed everything. One woman threatened an entire empire. This is the story of how a food cart operator broke through walls built from poison and betrayal, and how the man who trusted no one learned to eat again without fear. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all started. The lunch rush hit Lena's cart like it did every weekday at noon, fast, loud, and unforgiving. She moved behind her small stainless steel counter with the efficiency of someone who'd learned years ago that hesitation cost money. The line stretched 15 deep down the sidewalk, office workers checking phones, construction guys scratching lottery tickets, regulars who knew better than to ask for modifications. "Next," Lena called out, not looking up from the pasta water. "You got anything without garlic?" A man in an expensive suit leaned over her counter like he owned the block. "No." "I'll pay extra." Still no. She plated his order exactly as written on the menu board. "You want it or not?" He took it. They always did. Lena had owned this corner of Fulton Street for 6 years, and in that time she'd built something most food cart operators only dreamed about: a reputation. Not for being the cheapest or the fastest, but for being consistent. Her portions didn't shrink when ingredients got expensive. Her quality didn't drop on Fridays when she was tired. And she didn't take shit from anyone, which in this neighborhood meant something. She was 28, lean from constant movement. With dark hair she kept tied back in a braid that hadn't seen a salon in months. Her hands were scarred from burns and cuts that came with the territory. She wore the same thing every day: black t-shirt, jeans, boots that could handle 12 hours on her feet. No jewelry except a simple watch her mother had given her before the cancer took her. No makeup because who had time? No bullshit because life had beaten that out of her a long time ago. "Lena, you're out of napkins." Maria, who ran the coffee cart 2 spots down, tossed her a stack. "Thanks. I owe you." "You always say that." "I always mean it." The rhythm of service was almost meditative once you got into it. Boil, drain, toss, plate. Take money, make change, wipe down. Repeat. Lena had it down to a science. She could do 200 covers in 4 hours without breaking a sweat. Today she was on track to hit 250. Then the black SUVs arrived. The first one pulled up smooth and silent, windows tinted so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. Then another. Then 2 more. They didn't park. They simply stopped in the middle of Fulton Street like traffic laws were suggestions for other people. Cars behind them hit their horns. The SUVs didn't move. The lunch crowd noticed. Conversations dropped off. People started backing away from Lena's cart, putting distance between themselves and whatever was about to happen. She'd seen this before, though never directed at her. This was how power moved through Lower Manhattan: dark vehicles, darker intentions, everyone else scrambling to get out of the way. The rear door of the second SUV opened. He stepped out like he had all the time in the world. Damian Viscari was not what Lena expected. She'd heard the name. Everyone in this part of the city had. You didn't run a business south of Canal without knowing who controlled what. But hearing about someone and seeing them were different things. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that said he'd been an athlete before the weight of whatever he carried started pressing down. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Sharp suit that probably cost more than her entire cart. But it was his face that got her. Not handsome in any conventional way, more like handsome had been carved away by years of not sleeping, not eating right, not trusting anything soft enough to break. He looked sick. Not dying sick, but chronically wrong sick. The kind of illness that lived in your bones and reminded you every morning that your body was a battlefield you were slowly losing. 2 men flanked him immediately. Big guys in suits that didn't quite hide the hardware underneath. One of them scanned the street like he was counting threats. The other kept his hand near his waistband. Damian walked toward Lena's cart. The crowd parted. Even the brave ones, the ones who'd stood their ground through blizzards and summer blackouts, moved back. Only Lena stayed where she was, because it was her cart, and she'd be damned if she'd abandon her station for anyone. "We're closed," she said. One of the bodyguards stepped forward. Mr. Viscari would like, I'm talking to him, not you. The bodyguard's face went hard. Damien raised one hand slightly, and the man stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. You're not closed, Damien said. His voice was rough, like gravel wrapped in smoke. You have customers. Had. They left when your motorcade blocked traffic. I'll compensate you for the lost business. I don't want your money. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. Hard to tell. Everyone wants money. Then I guess I'm not everyone. Lena crossed her arms. You want food? Get in line like everybody else. Oh, wait, you scared off the line. Guess you're out of luck. The bodyguard on the left looked like he wanted to put Lena through the pavement. The one on the right had his hand fully on his gun now, not drawing, just ready. Damien studied her. Up close, she could see how exhausted he was. Not just tired, exhausted in a way that sleep didn't fix. His skin had a gray undertone that spoke of pain management and medications that barely worked. His hands, when he rested one on her counter, trembled slightly. What do you serve? He asked. What's on the board? She jerked her chin toward the menu. Lemon pasta, aglio e olio marinara, all fresh, all simple, no substitutions. Which one is easiest to digest? That question caught her off guard. Most people asked which one was biggest or spiciest or best. Nobody asked which one was easy. Lemon, she said after a moment. It's gentle, good acidity, light on the stomach. I use real lemons, not extract. Fresh parsley, little bit of good olive oil, pinch of salt. That's it. I'll take that. It's $12. He pulled out his wallet. The bodyguard moved to intercept, but Damien waved him off. He handed Lena a $100 bill. I don't have change for that. Keep it. I don't take tips that size. It's not a tip, it's for clearing your line. Lena wanted to refuse. Every instinct she had said taking money from this man was a mistake, but $88 would cover her supply run tomorrow and leave enough for the electrical bill that was already 2 weeks late. She took the 100. Wait here. She turned back to her station and started cooking. Fresh water for the pasta because she never used the same water twice. The lemon zest first, to wake up the oil. Then the juice, the parsley, the salt, measured by hand. She worked fast but not rushed, the way she always did. Good food didn't happen on someone else's timeline. Behind her, she heard one of the bodyguards on his phone. Yeah, we're still at the cart. I don't know. He's waiting for food. Another voice, tinny, through the speaker. How long? As long as he wants. The pasta took 6 minutes. She drained it, tossed it with the lemon oil, adjusted the salt, plated it in a simple white bowl. No garnish, no fancy presentation, just food that tasted like what it was. She set it on the counter. Damien looked at it like it might explode. It's pasta, Lena said, not a bomb. You'd be surprised how often those are the same thing. He picked up the fork she'd given him. His hand shook harder now, not from age or weakness, but from something deeper. Fear, maybe. Or memory. He took a small bite, then stopped. His eyes closed. For a long moment he didn't move, didn't breathe. Just stood there with his eyes shut and the fork halfway back to the bowl. You all right? Lena asked. When he opened his eyes, they were wet. It doesn't hurt, he said quietly. What doesn't? Eating. He took another bite, then another. He ate slowly, deliberately, like every mouthful was something precious he needed to memorize. The bodyguards watched him with expressions Lena couldn't read. Concern, maybe, or something close to it. When he finished, he set the fork down carefully. Who taught you to cook? My mother. She was talented. She was practical, couldn't afford to waste food, so everything had to taste good enough that we'd finish it. And the lemon? She had stomach problems, near the end. Lemon was one of the only things that didn't make it worse. Damien nodded slowly. I need you to cook for me. I just did. I mean regularly, daily. I have a business. I'll buy it. Name your price. It's not for sale. Everything is for sale. Now you sound like every other asshole with money. Lena started cleaning her station. Thanks for the business. Don't block my street again. She expected him to argue. Instead, he reached into his jacket, Both bodyguards tensed and pulled out a card. Plain white, no logo, just a phone number embossed in black. "When you change your mind," he said, setting it on the counter. "I won't." "You will." He turned toward the SUV, then paused. "What's your name?" "Lena." "Lena." He repeated it like he was testing the weight. "Thank you for the meal." Then he was gone, folded back into the dark interior of the SUV. The convoy pulled away as smoothly as it had arrived, leaving behind nothing but stopped traffic and the lingering smell of expensive leather. Maria appeared at Lena's elbow. "Girl, do you know who that was?" "Some guy with stomach problems." "That was Damien Vescari. He owns half of Tribeca. The other half, he controls. People don't say no to him." "I just did." "Yeah." Maria looked worried. "I noticed." Lena picked up the card he'd left. The number on it didn't have a name, no area code, just 10 digits that somehow felt heavier than they should. She threw it in the trash. For 3 days, nothing happened. Lena ran her cart like always. The lunch rush came and went. She served her regulars, dealt with the difficult customers, cleaned her station until it gleamed. Life continued exactly as it had before a convoy of SUVs had disrupted her Thursday afternoon. On the 4th day, the flowers arrived. They came in the morning before she'd even finished setting up. A delivery guy she'd never seen before rolled up with a hand truck supporting an arrangement so massive it blocked half the sidewalk. White lilies, orchids, roses in shades of cream and pale gold, the kind of thing you sent to funerals or weddings, not food carts. "Lena Vale?" the delivery guy asked. "Yeah." "Sign here." She signed. He left. She stared at the flowers like they might bite. The card was simple. "Thank you for the meal." Maria whistled low. Someone's got an admirer. Someone's got a problem understanding the word no. Lena tried to give them away. Offered them to Maria, to the guys who ran the halal cart on the corner, to anyone walking by who looked like they might want several $100s worth of flowers. Nobody took them. In this neighborhood, you didn't accept gifts that came with invisible strings. She ended up leaving them on the subway bench at Fulton Station, gone in 10 minutes. The next morning, there were more. Different arrangement, same message. She didn't even bring these ones to the cart, just gave them straight to the delivery guy to take back. "Can't do that," he said. "I get paid when they're delivered, not returned." "Then deliver them somewhere else." "Address says here." "I'm refusing delivery." "That's between you and the sender, lady. I just drive the truck." He left them anyway. Lena donated them to the church 2 blocks over. Father Mike didn't ask questions. The flowers kept coming. Every morning for a week. Different varieties, different arrangements, same message. Lena stopped accepting them personally. Just let them pile up on the corner until the sanitation department complained, and she had to call a bulk waste pickup. On day 8, the flowers stopped. On day 9, her permits got renewed. Lena had been fighting with the city for 3 months over her vendor license. Some bureaucratic nonsense about updated health inspections and processing fees she couldn't afford. She'd been operating on a temporary extension that was set to expire in 2 weeks, after which she'd be shut down until she could navigate the red tape. Now suddenly, all her paperwork was approved. Renewed for 3 years. Fees waived due to administrative error. She called the permit office. "There's been a mistake." "No mistake, Ms. Vale. Your file is all in order." "I didn't submit the updated. Someone did. Everything is current. You're good to operate through 2028. Lena hung up. She knew exactly who had made her problems disappear. That night, after she'd locked down her cart and was walking toward the subway, a car pulled up beside her. Not an SUV this time. A black sedan. Expensive, but not ostentatious. The window rolled down. Damien sat in the back seat. "Get in," he said, "but pass." "I'm not asking." "Still pass. 5 minutes. I'll have my driver take you wherever you want to go after." Lena looked at him. He looked worse than last time. Thinner, if that was possible, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of nights spent somewhere other than sleep. Against her better judgment, she got in. The interior smelled like leather and something medicinal she couldn't place. The seats were heated. Soft jazz played from speakers she couldn't see. Damien sat on the far side, maintaining distance. "You can't buy me," Lena said. I'm not trying to. The permits were a problem you didn't deserve. I solved it. Why? Because you fed me something that didn't hurt, and I want to know if you can do it again. That's it? You went through all this for one more bowl of pasta? He was quiet for a moment. Outside, the city slid past the tinted windows, lights and people and life happening everywhere except inside this dark, quiet capsule. I was poisoned, Damien said finally. 3 years ago. Someone close to me tried to kill my father. The poison was in our food, something slow-acting and hard to detect. My father died. I survived, but barely. Since then, everything I eat feels like swallowing glass. The doctors say it's psychological, that my body remembers the trauma. They've tried medications, therapy, dietary restrictions. Nothing works. I'm sorry, Lena said, and meant it. I eat because I have to, not because I want to. Not because it brings me any pleasure. Most days, I force down protein shakes and bland vegetables and tell myself it's fuel, nothing more. Then you gave me a $12 bowl of lemon pasta, and for 6 minutes I forgot to be afraid. He turned to look at her directly. I need that. Not every day. Not forever. Just sometimes. Just enough to remember what it's like to eat like a human being instead of a condemned man waiting for the next execution. Lena wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him she ran a food cart, not a therapy kitchen. But she kept thinking about her mother in the hospital, refusing food because everything hurt, until Lena learned to make things gentle enough that eating stopped being warfare. I can't come to you, she said. I have my business. I'll come to the cart. Your security circus shuts me down every time you show up. Then I'll come alone. You won't. He smiled, thin and sharp. You're right, but I can come with less fanfare. And the flowers, the grand gestures, will stop if you prefer. I prefer. Done. They sat in silence for a block. Where do you want to be dropped? Damien asked. Lena gave him her address. The driver adjusted course without being told. They pulled up outside her building 15 minutes later. A fifth-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that had been gentrifying for a decade but still had a way to go. Before she got out, she turned back. I'll cook for you, at the cart. Once a week, Thursdays, during lunch rush. You eat there, you pay like everyone else. You don't send gifts or fix my problems. We keep this simple. Once a week isn't enough. It's what I'm offering. Damien considered. Twice a week. Once. Lena, once. Take it or starve. Another thin smile. You don't negotiate like a cook. I'm not a cook. I'm a business owner who happens to make food. What's the difference? Cooks work for other people. I work for myself. He extended his hand. Thursdays, then. She shook it. His grip was firm despite the tremor. One more thing, Lena said. You ever fix my problems without asking again, our deal is done. I don't need saving, and I don't want a benefactor. You want food, we trade money for service. That's it. Understood. She got out. The sedan pulled away, leaving her on the dark street in front of her building. Inside her pocket, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you. She deleted it without responding. Thursday came. Lena prepared the same lemon pasta she'd made before, but better. She'd spent her own money on higher quality olive oil, on lemons from a supplier who sourced from California instead of the commercial distributor. She told herself it was for all her customers, not just one. She almost believed it. Damien arrived at 12:30, walking this time, flanked by only one bodyguard who stayed back far enough to give them space. He wore a different suit, still expensive, still sharp, but somehow less intimidating, maybe because he was smiling. You came back, Lena said. I said I would. People say a lot of things. He ordered the lemon pasta. She made it fresh. He ate it standing at her counter, slower than last time, savoring it. When he finished, he set down the fork and just stood there for a moment, breathing. Same time next week? He asked. If you want. I do. He paid exact change and left. That became their routine. Every Thursday at 12:30, Damien would show up and order the same thing. Sometimes they talked, small things, nothing deep, the weather, her supplier problems, his thoughts on a restaurant that had just opened nearby. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, and that was fine too. On the 6th week, he asked, Have you ever wanted to expand? Meaning? A restaurant, a real kitchen. This is a real kitchen. You know what I mean? Lena wiped down her counter. Can't afford it. Commercial space in Manhattan costs more than I'll make in 5 years. Even if I could swing the rent, there's equipment, permits, staff. It's a nice dream, not a realistic plan. What if I invested? No. You didn't even hear the terms. Don't need to. I told you, no benefactors. It wouldn't be charity. It would be business. You have talent. I have capital. We could build something. We, Lena repeated. That's the problem right there. I build things myself, or I don't build them. That's pride talking. Yeah, it is. Pride is all I've got some days. Damien didn't push. He finished his pasta and left, same as always. But the next Thursday, he brought papers. Loan documents, he said, setting them on her counter. Standard terms. 10-year repayment, 3% interest. No collateral except the business itself. You default. I take the restaurant. You succeed, you pay me back. Either way, your name is on the deed, not mine. Lena stared at the papers like they were a snake. Why would you do this? Because you feed me things that don't hurt, and I want you to be able to keep doing that. You could hire any chef in the city. I don't want any chef. I want you. The way he said it made something flutter in her chest that she immediately crushed. This was business. Just business. A transaction between two people who barely knew each other. I'll think about it, she said. Take your time. She took the papers home, read them front to back, had Maria's boyfriend, who was a paralegal, review them. Everything Damien had said was true. Standard terms, no hidden clauses, clean exit if things went sideways. It was almost too good to be true, which meant it probably was. The next Thursday, she gave him back the papers. I can't, she said. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe. He took the papers without comment. Can I ask why? Because the second I take your money, this stops being equal. Right now you come to my cart and we trade. I give you food, you give me $12, we're square. The moment I owe you something, anything, that balance tips. I won't do that. You don't trust me. I don't know you. Fair enough. He ordered his pasta. She made it. They didn't speak again until he was leaving. Lena? She looked up. For what it's worth, I respect your decision. Not many people would turn down that opportunity. Then not many people are as stubborn as me. He smiled. No, they're not. Chet. 2 weeks later, Lena's cart was vandalized. She arrived at 5 a.m. to set up and found the locks broken, her equipment smashed, inventory dumped on the street. Someone had taken a crowbar to her gas lines and bent them beyond repair. They'd slashed her awning, shattered her sneeze guards, destroyed every pot and pan she owned. The loss was total. She stood there in the dark, looking at the wreckage of 6 years of work, and felt something crack inside her chest. Not break. Crack. Like ice under pressure, webbing out but not quite collapsing. Maria found her at 6. Jesus, Lena. Yeah. You call the cops? What are they going to do? Insurance? Doesn't cover malicious damage. Can't afford that policy. Maria put an arm around her shoulders. Lena let her, because she needed something to hold her upright, and pride wasn't cutting it. Who would do this? Maria asked. Lena knew. Not who specifically, but why. This wasn't random. This was a message. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number from the card she'd thrown away but still remembered. He answered on the first ring. I need that loan, Lena said. Done. No hesitation, no questions. I'll have the papers to you by tomorrow. Tonight. Tonight, then. She hung up. Maria looked at her. You know who did this, don't you? I have an idea. And you're still doing business with him? Not with him, despite him. She called her insurance company anyway, filed a police report she knew would go nowhere, took pictures of everything. By noon, Damien's people had cleared the wreckage. By evening, she had new equipment on order and a check for the first installment of her loan. By the end of the week, she had a location. Not in Manhattan, too expensive, even with Damien's backing. Brooklyn instead, Red Hook, in a space that had been a coffee roaster before the owner retired. Good bones, decent foot traffic, close enough to the water that she could watch ships in the harbor during slow periods. She signed the lease herself, hired contractors herself, designed the kitchen herself. Damien stayed back, true to his word, nothing but a silent partner whose only involvement was the monthly check she used to cover expenses. He still came for lunch every Thursday. Now he sat at a table in her empty dining room, eating lemon pasta while she painted walls and installed light fixtures. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon. "At what?" "Building something from nothing. Had practice." "Your cart?" "My life." He nodded slowly. "I understand that." Believed him. 3 months in, the restaurant started to take shape. She'd kept it simple. 12 tables, open kitchen, menu focused on the things she knew how to make better than anyone else. Pasta, obviously, but also roasted vegetables, simple salads, bread she'd learned to bake during the construction phase when she had too much nervous energy and not enough to do. She called it Lena's. Not creative, but honest. The week before opening, Damien showed up with a gift. "You said no gifts," Lena reminded him. "This isn't a gift. It's an investment in my continued ability to eat your food." He handed her a box. Inside was a set of kitchen knives, professional-grade Japanese steel, balanced perfectly. The kind of equipment she'd dreamed about but never thought she'd own. "Damien, they're tools, not jewelry. You wouldn't refuse a carpenter a hammer." She wanted to argue, but the knives were perfect, and he was right. They were tools. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You're welcome." Opening night was small. Invitation only, friends and family, people who'd supported her through the cart days and the construction phase. Maria came, and her boyfriend, and Father Mike from the church, and even some of her old regulars who'd tracked her down through word of mouth. Damien didn't come. She told herself she didn't care. But when she locked up at midnight and found him waiting outside, something in her chest unknotted. "Thought you'd skip it," she said. "I wanted you to have your night, without complications." "And now?" "Now I'm here to tell you congratulations, and that I'm proud of you, and that your mother would be too." Lena's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They stood there in the dark street, the restaurant glowing behind them, the city humming all around. "Lena," Damien said softly, "whatever happens next, you should know, this thing we're doing, this arrangement, it stopped being just about food a long time ago." "I know. Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me." "Me too." He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm despite the autumn chill. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said, "if that's all right." "It's not all right. It's complicated and messy and probably a terrible idea." "So that's a no?" "It's a yes, you idiot." He kissed her. It was gentle and careful and tasted like lemons. That kiss changed nothing and everything. They still kept their Thursday lunches. Damien still paid for his meals. Lena still ran her restaurant with the same iron-fisted independence that had defined her from the start. But now when he left, she watched him go. And when she worked late in the kitchen, she'd find text messages on her phone. Nothing romantic, just small observations about his day that he wanted to share with someone who might understand. The restaurant found its rhythm quickly. Word spread through Red Hook and beyond. People came for the pasta and stayed for the atmosphere. Warm light, simple tables, the kind of place where you could hear yourself think. Lena kept the menu tight, 12 items max, everything she could stand behind. She worked the line herself most nights, unwilling to trust anyone else with the quality that had become her reputation. Maria stopped by during the 3rd week of operation, sliding into a corner table during the dinner rush. "You're doing good business," she said when Lena finally had a moment to breathe. "Better than I expected." "You been around?" Lena didn't have to ask who. "Thursdays, like always." "Just Thursdays?" "What are you asking, Maria?" "I'm asking if you're being careful." Lena wiped down the counter between them, buying time. "I'm always careful. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Men like Damien Viscari, they don't do simple. They don't do casual. Everything comes with strings, even when they swear it doesn't." He's been nothing but respectful. Now, but what happens when that changes? What happens when his world comes knocking and you're standing in the doorway? Lena didn't have an answer for that. The question came back to her 2 nights later when Damien showed up at closing time. Not Thursday. Friday, late, after she'd already sent her small staff home and was doing the final cleanup herself. She heard the knock on the glass door and looked up to find him standing outside, hands in his pockets, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. She unlocked the door. We're closed. I know. I'm not here for food. Then why are you here? He stepped inside and she locked the door behind him out of habit. The restaurant felt different, empty, bigger somehow, every sound echoing off the exposed brick walls. I need to tell you something, Damien said, and I need you to listen before you decide I'm insane. Lena crossed her arms. I'm listening. The poisoning I told you about, the one that killed my father. We never found out who did it. Not definitively. We had suspicions, eliminated some people, made examples of others. But the person who actually arranged it, who planned it, who wanted my father dead badly enough to risk killing me too, they're still out there. Okay. And now you're in my life, which means you're visible, which means whoever wanted to hurt me then might see you as an opportunity now. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lena had known, intellectually, that Damien's world came with dangers, but hearing it stated plainly was different from abstract knowledge. Are you trying to scare me? She asked. I'm trying to be honest with you. You deserve to know what you're walking into. Little late for that conversation, don't you think? I already took your money, already built this place with your backing. The restaurant is yours. The loan is legitimate. If you want to walk away from me, from us, you can do that without losing anything you've built. Generous. Practical. I won't trap you, Lena. Not with money, not with threats, not with anything. But I also won't lie to you about the risks. She moved to one of the tables and sat down, suddenly exhausted. Damien sat across from her, maintaining the careful distance he always kept until she invited him closer. Who do you think did it? Lena asked. The poisoning. There's a list. Other families who wanted territory. Business partners who felt cheated. People my father wronged over the years, and there were plenty of those. But you have a guess. Victor Salazar. The name came out flat, emotionless. He runs operations in Brooklyn and Queens. My father blocked an expansion he wanted, cost him millions and lost revenue. A month later, we were poisoned. Can't you just, I don't know, deal with him? Damien's laugh was bitter. You watch too many movies. I can't just kill everyone I suspect. That's how you start wars that burn down the entire city. Without proof, without certainty, all I can do is watch and wait. And in the meantime, I'm supposed to what? Look over my shoulder for the rest of my life? No. In the meantime, I'm supposed to tell you the truth and let you decide if being with me is worth the complication. Lena studied him across the table. He looked tired, not just physically, though there was that too. Tired in a deeper way, like carrying the weight of too many secrets for too long. I'm not good at this, she said finally. At what? Relationships, trusting people, letting someone in. My mom died when I was 19. I've been on my own since then, building everything myself because that's the only way I know how to do it. The idea of relying on someone else, of needing someone, it scares the hell out of me. I know the feeling, but I also know that I look forward to Thursdays now, that I check my phone more than I should, hoping you've texted. That when you kissed me, it felt like something I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. Damien reached across the table. She took his hand. So where does that leave us? He asked. Somewhere complicated, somewhere probably stupid, but somewhere I'm willing to try if you are. I'm very willing. They sat there in the quiet restaurant, holding hands across the table like teenagers, until Lena finally stood and pulled him to his feet. Come on, she said. Help me finish closing. If you're going to be around, you might as well be useful. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Yes, chef. They worked together in comfortable silence. Damien wiping down tables while Lena finished the kitchen, the small domestic ritual somehow more intimate than the kiss had been. When they finally locked up and stepped out into the November night, he walked her to her car. Can I take you to dinner tomorrow? He asked. I run a restaurant. I eat at work. Breakfast, then. I'm not a breakfast person. Lena. What? Let me take you on a date, a real one. Somewhere that isn't your restaurant or my car or a street corner in Lower Manhattan. She wanted to say no, wanted to keep this thing between them small and manageable, but his hand was warm in hers and she was tired of always being careful. Okay, she said, but nowhere fancy. I don't own fancy clothes. We'll go somewhere you can wear jeans. And you pay for yourself. We split it. Lena, those are my terms. He sighed. You're impossible. You're figuring that out now? He kissed her goodnight, slower this time, deep enough that she forgot for a moment about danger and complications and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. When he pulled away, she was breathing hard. Tomorrow, he said, I'll pick you up at 10. Make it 11. I sleep late on Saturdays. 11. She watched him get into his car, a different one this time, something dark and low and fast, and drive away into the Brooklyn night. Then she sat in her own car for a long moment, trying to remember how to think clearly. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Please tell me you're being smart about this. Lena typed back. Define smart. Not falling for a man whose enemies poison people. Too late. Lena, I know, I'm being careful. I promise. She wasn't sure if that was true, but it was what Maria needed to hear. The next morning, Damien picked her up in a car she didn't recognize. Older, less conspicuous, the kind of vehicle that blended into traffic instead of commanding it. He was dressed down too, jeans and a dark sweater, no suit in sight. Where are we going? Lena asked as she buckled in. You'll see. They drove north, out of Brooklyn and into Queens, the city changing around them from gentrified brownstones to working-class neighborhoods where bodegas outnumbered boutiques. He pulled up in front of a small diner with a faded sign and cracked vinyl booths visible through the window. This is your idea of a date? Lena asked. You said no fancy places. I know, but... She stopped, looking at the diner more closely. This is where you grew up, isn't it? 3 blocks that way, he pointed east. My father brought me here every Sunday morning, best pancakes in Queens, and they don't care who you are or what you do, just whether you tip well. They went inside. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and tired feet, lit up when she saw Damien. Danny! Haven't seen you in months. I know, Rose. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just sit down and let me feed you. She grabbed 2 menus and led them to a corner booth. Who's your friend? This is Lena. Lena? Rose. Girlfriend? Rose asked with the bluntness of someone who'd earned the right. Damien looked at Lena. She looked back. Yeah, Lena said. I guess I am. Rose beamed. About damn time you brought someone around. Your father would be happy. After she left to get coffee, Lena leaned forward. Danny? Family called me that. Before. Before what? Before I became someone who needed to be called Damien. The coffee came. They ordered pancakes for him, omelet for her. The food was exactly what Damien had promised. Simple, honest, made by someone who cared about the work. This is good, Lena said around a mouthful of eggs. Told you. How often did you come here? Before? Every week, sometimes more. After my father died, I stopped. Couldn't make myself walk through that door. But you came today. I came today because I wanted to share it with you. Wanted you to see where I came from before everything got complicated. Lena reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you for bringing me here. They finished breakfast slowly, talking about nothing important. Her plans for the restaurant's winter menu, his thoughts on expanding into legitimate business holdings, the weather, the state of the subway system. Normal couple conversation, the kind Lena hadn't had since before her mother got sick. When they left, Rose hugged Damien and whispered something in his ear that made him smile. In the car, Lena asked what she'd said. That she likes you, that you have good eyes. Good eyes. Her metric for trustworthy people. And what's your metric? He started the engine, pulling back into traffic. Whether they feed me things that don't hurt. They spent the rest of the day together, wandering through Queens like tourists in their own city. He showed her the elementary school he'd attended, the park where he'd broken his arm falling off the swings, the corner store where he'd stolen candy once and gotten caught. Small pieces of his history, offered without ceremony. In return, she told him about growing up in the Bronx, about her mother's long illness and longer death, about the food cart she'd bought with the last of the insurance money because she didn't know what else to do with grief that big. You turned pain into something productive, Damien said as they sat on a bench overlooking the East River. Didn't have a choice. Pain was going to eat me alive if I didn't use it for something. I understand that. After my father died, I threw myself into the business. Worked 20-hour days, made enemies of anyone who got in my way, built an empire on anger because anger was easier than grief. Did it work? For a while. Then I realized I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone my father wouldn't have liked very much. And now? Now I'm trying to be someone better, trying to find the parts of myself I buried under all that rage. He turned to look at her. You help with that. When I'm with you, I remember what it's like to be human instead of just powerful. Lena kissed him right there on the bench in broad daylight and didn't care who saw. They made it back to her apartment around sunset. She invited him up without thinking too hard about what that meant. Her place was small, one bedroom in a building with questionable heat and neighbors who fought loudly, but it was hers. Damien looked around the sparse space with genuine interest. This is nice. It's a shoebox. It's yours. That makes it nice. He noticed the photographs on her bookshelf. Her mother, younger and healthy, standing in front of a restaurant Lena didn't recognize. Where was this taken? Little place in the Bronx where she worked before she got sick. They closed years ago, but she loved it there. Said the owner treated his staff like family. Is that why you wanted your own place? To build that kind of environment? Maybe. I don't know. I just knew I wanted to make food that mattered to people, that gave them something good in their day, even if the rest of it was shit. You do that. You did it for me. She moved closer to him, close enough to feel his warmth. Damien? Yeah? Stay tonight. His eyes darkened. You sure? No, but I want you to anyway. They moved together slowly, carefully, learning each other with the same attention Lena brought to her cooking. He was gentle in a way that surprised her, reverent almost, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. She showed him she wouldn't break, and he showed her what it was like to be with someone who saw her clearly and wanted her anyway. Afterward, they lay tangled in her too small bed, the city loud outside her window. I need to tell you something, Damien said into the darkness. If this is where you reveal you're actually married or have 6 kids or are secretly a vampire, I'm going to be pissed. He laughed softly. None of those things. But I am being watched. Probably have been since the day I first came to your cart, which means now you're being watched too. Lena went still. By who? My enemies. My allies. The people who want to know if I have weaknesses they can exploit. Being with me means giving up privacy, means always being aware that someone might be paying attention. Can't you stop it? I can minimize it. I have people I trust who keep an eye on things, make sure no one gets too close. But completely stop it? No, that's the price of the life I live. She should have been angry, should have felt manipulated or trapped. Instead, she just felt tired. So what do we do? She asked. We're careful. We don't take unnecessary risks, and you let me provide security for the restaurant, not because I think you can't handle yourself, but because I need to know you're safe when I'm not there. I don't want guards following me around. Not guards, just cameras, better locks, a panic button that goes directly to people I trust. Things you won't notice day to day, but that give us both peace of mind. Lena thought about it. About Maria's warnings and her own instincts and the very real fact that she'd gotten into something way over her head. Okay, she said finally. But I have conditions. Of course you do. Nothing visible. No suits with earpieces scaring my customers. And if I say something's too much, you back off. This is still my place, my business, my life. Deal. They sealed it with a kiss that turned into more, and by the time they finally slept, dawn was already lightening the sky. Damien left early, before the neighbors were up, kissing her goodbye with promises to call later. Lena showered and dressed and tried to pretend her life hadn't fundamentally shifted overnight. The security upgrades started appearing on Monday. New cameras, small, discreet, positioned to cover all entrances. Upgraded locks that looked standard but were reinforced steel. A panic button installed under the host stand, innocuous enough that most people would mistake it for a light switch. True to his word, nothing was obvious. Her staff didn't even notice the changes. Business stayed strong. Lena worked her usual brutal hours, perfecting dishes and managing inventory and handling the 1,000 small crises that came with running a restaurant. Damien came for lunch on Thursdays and stayed for dinner sometimes, sitting at the bar where he could watch her work. You're different in the kitchen, he observed one night. Different how? Confident, powerful, like you know exactly who you are and what you're doing. That's because I do. Cooking is the one thing in my life that's always made sense. I'm jealous of that. I've spent years trying to figure out who I am outside of my father's shadow. And still working on it. 3 weeks into their relationship, Lena met Damien's people for the first time. Not all of them, just the inner circle, the ones who actually mattered. They came to the restaurant after hours, 5 men in expensive suits who looked at her like they were assessing a potential threat. Marco was first, Damien's head of security, built like a concrete wall with eyes that missed nothing. Then Vincent, who handled finances. Luis, who ran operations. James, who managed legal affairs. And finally Anthony, the youngest, who apparently dealt with special situations that Lena decided she didn't want to know more about. "So you're the cook," Marco said. "Chef," Lena corrected. "What's the difference?" "About 40 hours a week and a shit ton of stress." That got a small smile. "Fair enough." They sat at the largest table, and Lena brought out food. Nothing fancy, just things she knew were good. Pasta, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. She watched them eat, watched their reactions, the same way she'd watch any table. "This is excellent," Vincent said. Damien wasn't exaggerating. "He exaggerates about me?" "Constantly. It's annoying." Damien, sitting at the end of the table, looked embarrassed. Lena filed that away as leverage for later. "We need to talk about security," Marco said, getting down to business. "You're visible now. Dating the boss makes you a target." Damien explained. "Did he explain what we do to people who threaten our people?" "I got the general idea." "Good. Because it's important you understand. We take care of our own. You're under our protection now, whether you like it or not." Lena looked at Damien. He gave a small shrug that said, "I told you they'd be like this." "I appreciate the concern," Lena said carefully, "but I don't need babysitters." "Not babysitters. Backup. There's a difference." "Which is?" "Babysitters tell you what to do. Backup shows up when things go wrong and makes sure you survive it." Put that way, it was harder to argue. They talked for another hour, mostly logistics, some veiled threats toward anyone who might threaten her. Occasional bursts of dark humor that reminded Lena these men lived in a world she only barely understood. By the time they left, she was exhausted. "That went well," Damien said, helping her clean up. "They're terrifying. They're loyal. There's a difference. Marco hates me. Marco doesn't trust anyone. Give him time. And the others? Vincent thinks you're good for me. Luis wants to invest in the restaurant. James is already planning how to protect you legally if anything goes sideways. And Anthony," he paused. "What about Anthony?" "Anthony said you have good instincts. Coming from him, that's high praise." They finished cleaning in silence. When everything was put away, Lena locked the door and turned to find Damien watching her. "What?" she asked. "I'm in love with you." The words hit her like a physical blow, not because they were unwelcome, but because they made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. "That's a really bad idea," she said. "I know. We've only been together a few weeks. I know. And your life is dangerous and complicated, and I'm just a chef with a small restaurant in Brooklyn. You're not just anything." He crossed the space between them. "You're the person who saw me dying by inches and decided to feed me anyway. You're the woman who told me no when everyone else said yes. You're stubborn and proud, and you fight for everything you have, and I've never met anyone like you." "Damien, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." But the thing was, she did want to say it back. The words were right there, pressing against her teeth, demanding to be spoken. "I love you too," she said quietly, "and it scares the hell out of me." "Me too." He kissed her there in the dark restaurant, surrounded by the smell of garlic and bread and everything she'd built with her own hands. And for the first time in years, Lena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something good. That feeling lasted exactly 4 more days. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning when Lena arrived at the restaurant to find her delivery sitting in the alley instead of inside the walk-in cooler where her supplier always left it. The boxes were open, contents spilling onto the dirty pavement. Someone had slashed through the packaging with something sharp. Not stolen anything, just destroyed it. She called Marco immediately. "Stay where you are," he said. "Don't touch anything." He arrived 20 minutes later with 2 other men, all of them moving through her alley like they were searching for bombs. Maybe they were. Cameras caught anything? Marco asked. I don't know. I haven't checked. He pulled out his phone, accessed the security feed she didn't even know he had access to, watched, his face going hard. What? Lena demanded. 3 men, 2 a.m. They knew where the cameras were, kept their faces covered. Professional work. Professional work to destroy a vegetable delivery? It's not about the vegetables. It's about sending a message. What message? Marco looked at her with something that might have been pity. That they can get to you whenever they want. Lena's stomach went cold. Who's they? That's what we're going to find out. He made some calls. Within an hour, Damien showed up looking like he hadn't slept. He took one look at the ruined delivery and his jaw went tight. Victor, he said. You don't know that, Marco said. Who else would it be? Could be anyone. You've made a lot of enemies. Not like this. This is personal. This is about hurting me by scaring her. Lena stepped between them. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. And someone explain who Victor is and why he's destroying my produce. Damien ran a hand through his hair. He looked older than usual, worn down by something Lena couldn't see. Victor Salazar. I told you about him. The man I think poisoned my father. He's been quiet for 3 years, staying in his territory, not making waves. If he's moving against me now, it's because he sees an opportunity. An opportunity called me. Yes. So what do? We increase security. Double the cameras, put someone on the restaurant overnight, make sure you're never alone. I'm alone all the time. I live alone. I work late. That's my life. Not anymore, it isn't. The finality in his tone made something snap inside her. You don't get to decide that. Lena, no. Listen to me. I understand there are risks. I accepted that when I got involved with you. But I will not become a prisoner in my own life because some asshole wants to play power games. This isn't a game. These people kill for a living. And I cook for a living. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing it out of fear. They stared at each other across the ruined vegetables. Marco cleared his throat. I'll give you 2 a minute, he said, disappearing back inside. When they were alone, Damien's shoulders sagged. I can't lose you. You won't. You don't know that. You don't know what these people are capable of. Then tell me. Stop protecting me from information and just tell me the truth. He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Victor doesn't just kill people, he makes examples of them. 3 years ago, one of his own men tried to skim money off the top. Victor found out, and instead of just killing him, he killed his wife. Made the guy watch. Then he killed the guy too, slowly, and left the bodies where everyone in the organization would see them. That's who we're dealing with. That's what I'm trying to protect you from. Lena felt sick. Not because she was surprised that people like that existed, but because she just realized how little she actually understood about the world Damien lived in. Why haven't you killed him? She asked. Because without proof he poisoned my father, killing him starts a war. Other families would see it as an unprovoked attack, and they'd choose sides. Half the city would burn before it was over. So we just wait? Hope he gets bored and goes away? We wait for him to make a mistake, something we can trace back to him definitively. Then we act. And in the meantime, I'm supposed to what? Hide? Be careful. Let us protect you. Stay alive long enough for this to blow over. Lena looked at the ruined food scattered across her alley. Perfectly good vegetables, destroyed for no reason except to prove a point. It made her furious in a way she hadn't expected. Fine, she said. Put your people on the restaurant. Do whatever security theater makes you feel better, but I'm not changing how I live. I'm not giving him that power over me. Lena, those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Damien pulled her close and she let him, burying her face against his chest. He smelled like expensive cologne, and underneath that, fear. I'm sorry, he said into her hair. I'm sorry I brought this into your life. Little late for apologies. I know. They stood there in the alley for a long moment before Marco came back, tactfully clearing his throat. We need to clean this up and get you a new delivery, he said. I've got people coming. The rest of the day passed in a blur. New cameras went up, more sophisticated than the first set. Marco assigned someone named Tommy to overnight shifts, a quiet guy in his 40s who looked like he could break a person in half without breaking a sweat. The locks got upgraded again, and Marco gave Lena a phone number that would reach him directly, anytime, day or night. "You see anything weird, you call," he said. "I don't care if it's 3 a.m. and you think you're being paranoid. You call." "Got it." "I'm serious, Lena. Weird cars parked too long. Someone asking too many questions. Anything that feels off. Your instincts kept you alive this long. Trust them." She wanted to argue, to insist this was all overkill. But the memory of those slashed delivery boxes kept her quiet. Business continued because it had to. Lena couldn't afford to close, couldn't afford to show weakness to whoever was watching. So she showed up every day, cooked every service, smiled at her customers like her world wasn't slowly tilting sideways. Damien came by more often now, sometimes for meals, but mostly just to check on her. She could see the strain it was causing him, the constant worry, the calculation of risks, the weight of keeping her safe while running an empire that demanded his attention. "You look exhausted," she told him one night after service. "So do you." "I'm always exhausted. It's part of the job." "This is different. This is fear exhaustion." He wasn't wrong. Lena had started jumping at shadows, seeing threats in every unfamiliar face. The joy she'd found in running her own place was being slowly eaten away by hypervigilance. "I hate this," she said quietly. "I know. So do I. Is it always like this? Living the way you live?" "Sometimes. Other times, things are quiet and you almost forget the danger. Then something happens and you remember that peace is temporary." "That's a hell of a way to live." "It's the only way I know." They were in her apartment, the city spreading out below them through her narrow window. Lena had cooked dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and a simple salad, and they'd eaten mostly in silence. "Tell me about your father," she said suddenly. Damien looked surprised. "Why?" "Because you never talk about him. Not really. You mention the poisoning, the business, but never what he was actually like." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he stood and moved to the window, staring out at the lights. He was complicated, dangerous when he needed to be. But with me, he was just Dad. Taught me to ride a bike, helped with homework, took me to ball games. He kept that part of his life separate from the business as long as he could. When did that change? When I turned 18, he sat me down and explained what he really did, what our family really was. Gave me a choice. Walk away and he'd support me, or stay and learn the business. I stayed. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Other times I think about all the people who depend on me now, the legitimate businesses we run, the jobs we provide, the neighborhoods we protect. It's not all blood and violence. Some of it is actually good. But some of it is blood and violence. Yeah, some of it is. Lena went to stand beside him. Below, traffic moved through Brooklyn like blood through veins, the city alive and indifferent to their problems. "I'm not going to pretend I understand your world," she said, "but I'm trying to. And I need you to try to understand mine. I built something I'm proud of, something that's mine. If I let fear take that away, I'll never forgive myself. I'm not asking you to give up the restaurant. You're asking me to live in a cage, a safe cage, but still a cage. I'm asking you to stay alive." Same thing, from where I'm standing. They stood in tense silence until Damien's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going carefully blank. "When?" he asked. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. "I have to go," he said. "Something's come up." "What kind of something?" "The kind I can't talk about." Lena wanted to push, to demand answers, to insist on being included, but she could see in his face that this was a line she couldn't cross. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "Be careful," she said instead. He kissed her hard, almost desperately, then left without another word. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed checking her phone every 10 minutes, waiting for a call that never came. At some point, she gave up and went to the restaurant, arriving at 4 a.m. to find Tommy in the alley, drinking coffee. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Something like that. Want company while you prep?" "Sure." They worked in comfortable silence, Lena rolling out pasta dough while Tommy sat at the bar, a visible presence that somehow made her feel safer. The sun came up. Her staff trickled in. The restaurant opened for lunch service, and Lena threw herself into the rhythm of cooking, finding relief in the one thing that still made sense. Damien didn't come for lunch. Didn't call. By dinner service, Lena was convinced something terrible had happened. She was about to call Marco when Damien finally walked through the door. He looked like hell. Bruised knuckles, torn suit jacket, exhaustion so deep it had settled into his bones. "Kitchen," Lena said. "Now." She told her sous chef to handle the line and dragged Damien into her office, a tiny room barely big enough for a desk and 2 chairs. "What happened?" "Can't talk about it." "Try anyway." He sank into one of the chairs, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked defeated. "Victor made a move, tried to take one of our shipments. We intercepted, there was a confrontation, people got hurt." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. But 2 of my people are in the hospital, and Victor got away clean. No evidence, no witnesses willing to talk. Just more bodies and more questions." "Did you kill anyone?" The question hung in the air between them. Damien looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes." "No. But I came close. If Marco hadn't pulled me back, I would have." Lena didn't know what to say to that. Part of her was horrified, part of her understood. All of her was scared. "I need you to be honest with me," she said. "Is this going to end? Or is this just how it is now?" "I don't know. Victor's escalating, which means he's either desperate or confident. Either way, it's dangerous. For you or for me?" "Both." Lena sat down in the other chair. Her dinner service was happening without her, the kitchen running on autopilot. She should have been out there, making sure everything was perfect. Instead, she was in a closet-sized office, watching the man she loved fall apart. "I can't do this," she said quietly. Damien went very still. "Can't do what?" "This. Us. The constant fear, the violence, the not knowing if you're going to come back when you leave. I can't build a life on that foundation." "Lena, let me finish. I can't do this the way we're doing it now. If we're going to be together, really together, then I need to be a partner, not a possession you're trying to protect. I need to know what's happening, what the risks are, how to protect myself. No more secrets, no more keeping me in the dark for my own good. That's dangerous. Being with you is dangerous. At least this way I'll see it coming." He studied her face like he was trying to memorize it. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm sure I can't keep living like this." Damien nodded slowly. "Okay, full transparency, but that means when I tell you something is too dangerous, you trust my judgment. Deal?" "Deal." They shook on it, formal and ridiculous in the tiny office. Then Damien pulled her into his lap and held her like she was the only solid thing in his world. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I know. I love you too. Now go home, take a shower, and sleep for 12 hours. You look like death." "Romantic. I'm a chef, not a poet." He left through the back, and Lena returned to her kitchen. Her sous chef had handled service beautifully, and the night finished strong. When she finally locked up at midnight, Tommy walked her to her car. "Boss is crazy about you," he said conversationally. "Yeah? Haven't seen him like this since before the poisoning. You're good for him." "I'm a complication. Best kind." Lena drove home thinking about complications and choices, and how love was never as simple as it seemed from the outside. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the car following her. Almost. It stayed 3 cars back, dark sedan, no visible plates. Every turn she made, it made. Every light she caught, it caught. Lena's heart started hammering. She grabbed her phone, called Marco's direct line. "Someone's following me." "Where are you?" His voice went sharp, focused. She rattled off her location. "Dark sedan, 3 cars back, can't see the driver." "Keep driving, don't go home. Head toward the restaurant. Tommy's still there. I'm sending backup." "Marco, I'm scared." "I know. Stay on the line with me. Tell me every turn you make." She drove through Brooklyn, narrating her route, her hands shaking on the wheel. The sedan stayed with her, neither closing the distance nor falling back. Professional tale, just like Marco's security had been. Someone who knew what they were doing. "I'm 2 minutes out," Marco said. "Almost there." The sedan suddenly accelerated. "Marco, it's moving." It pulled alongside her, and for one terrible moment, Lena thought this was it. This was how she died, run off the road by Victor Salazar's people. Just another casualty in a war she barely understood. Then the window rolled down. The driver was a woman, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and expensive jewelry. She looked at Lena and smiled. "Tell Damien," she called across the gap between their cars. That Victor sends his regards. Then she was gone, accelerating away into the night, leaving Lena shaking so hard she had to pull over. Marco found her 2 blocks from the restaurant, parked with her hazards on, still gripping the phone. "I'm okay," she said when he yanked open her door. "I'm okay. She didn't hurt me." "What did she say?" Lena repeated the message. Marco's face went dark. "Get out. Tommy's going to drive your car back. You're coming with me." He took her to a building she'd never seen before, unmarked door in a part of Brooklyn that still had burned out streetlights. Inside was all business, computers, weapons, men who moved with military precision, a command center for an empire she'd only glimpsed the edges of. Damien was there, standing over a map of the city covered in markers and notes. When he saw her, something in his face cracked. "Are you hurt?" "No, just scared." He pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shaking, not fear, fury, barely controlled. "I'm going to kill him," Damien said quietly. "War or no war, proof or no proof. I'm going to end this." "That's exactly what he wants," Marco said. "He's baiting you." "I don't care." "You should. The second you move against him without justification, every family in the city chooses a side. You think this is bad? Wait until there's open warfare in the streets." Lena pulled back enough to see Damien's face. "Marco's right. If you go after him now, people die. Innocent people. Your people. And if I don't? He keeps escalating until he does hurt you, until that message isn't a message anymore. So we find another way." "There is no other way. Not with men like Victor." The room had gone quiet, everyone listening to their conversation. Lena became aware of being watched, judged, measured against some standard she didn't fully understand. "Then we give him what he wants," she said. Damien stared at her. "What?" "He wants you unstable, wants you making mistakes out of fear for me. So we take that weapon away." "How?" "I don't know yet. But there has to be something. Some way to protect me that doesn't involve starting a war or living in fear forever." Marco spoke up. "She could leave town. Disappear for a while until this blows over." "No," Lena and Damien said simultaneously. "Worth a shot." Marco shrugged. They spent the next hour strategizing, throwing out ideas and shooting them down. Witness protection. Public relationship announcement to make her too visible to attack. Counter-intimidation. Nothing felt right. Finally, exhausted and frustrated, they gave up for the night. Damien took Lena to a safe house, an apartment in a building he owned, clean and anonymous, and nowhere she'd ever been before. "You're staying here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we figure out the next step." "Will you stay with me?" "If you want me to." "I do." They lay in the unfamiliar bed, neither sleeping, both watching shadows move across the ceiling. "I'm sorry," Damien said into the darkness. "For what?" "For all of this. For putting you in danger. For not being strong enough to walk away from you when I should have." "You think you should have walked away?" "I think your life would be simpler if I had. Simpler isn't always better. Safer is." Lena rolled over to face him. "Listen to me. I chose this. Chose you. Even knowing the risks, even understanding the danger. I'm not some innocent victim you corrupted. I'm a grown woman who decided you were worth the complications. Are you sure about that? After tonight? Ask me again tomorrow. Tonight I'm too tired to think straight." He kissed her forehead. "Fair enough." Somewhere in the early hours, Lena finally slept. She dreamed of her mother's kitchen, of safety and simplicity, and a time when the biggest danger was burning the sauce. She woke to find Damien already awake, staring at his phone with an expression she couldn't read. "What is it?" "Victor's restaurant just burned down. Total loss. Fire department is calling it arson." Lena sat up. "Did you?" "No. I was here all night. So were all my people." "Then who?" Damien showed her his phone, a text message from an unknown number. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You're welcome." "Someone else is moving against Victor," Damien said slowly. "Someone with enough power to destroy his property and enough discretion to not get caught. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet, but it changes things." "How?" He was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Victor's distracted now, dealing with his own problems, which gives us room to breathe, to plan, to figure out our next move without him breathing down our necks. Or it makes him more desperate. That too. Lena's phone rang. Her restaurant manager panicked. Lena, you need to come down here. There's someone here asking for you. Says it's important. Who? He won't give his name, just says to tell you it's about mutual interests. Lena looked at Damien. He was already reaching for his jacket. We're on our way, she said. They arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes later to find a man in his 60s sitting at the bar, drinking espresso like he owned the place. He wore a tailored suit that had probably cost more than Lena's first car, and he had the kind of face that gave nothing away. Smooth, ageless, dangerous in the way granite was dangerous. Marco and two other men had already arrived, positioned strategically around the dining room. The stranger seemed unbothered by their presence. Mr. Vescari, the man said, not standing. Thank you for coming. Who the hell are you? Damien's voice was ice. My name is Roman Kozlov. I believe we have a common problem. Damien went very still. Lena had never heard that name before, but clearly Damien had. Marco's hand moved closer to his weapon. Everyone out, Damien said quietly. Lena, you too. No, Lena said. You promised full transparency, remember? I'm staying. Damien looked like he wanted to argue, but Roman spoke first. Let the girl stay. This concerns her as much as it concerns you. She's not involved in this. The moment Victor Salazar's courier followed her car and delivered a message, she became involved. Or are we pretending that didn't happen? Lena moved to stand beside Damien. I'm staying. Damien's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Fine. Marco, clear the room, but stay close. Marco ushered out Lena's staff, leaving just the four of them, Damien, Lena, Roman, and Marco, positioned by the door. Talk, Damien said. Roman set down his espresso cup with careful precision. Victor Salazar has become a problem. Not just for you, for several of us. He's expanding into territories that were promised to other families, breaking agreements that have kept the peace for decades. Last night's fire was a warning, one he clearly didn't receive because this morning he retaliated by killing two of my people. I didn't ask for your help. No, but you're going to accept it anyway because Victor is planning something bigger than intimidating your girlfriend or burning down buildings. He's planning to kill you, Mr. Vescari, and he's planning to do it soon. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. How do you know this? Damien asked. Because he approached me 2 weeks ago, asked me to support him when he made his move. Promised me a significant cut of your territory in exchange for looking the other way. And you're telling me this because? Because I don't trust Victor Salazar. Because the man who poisoned your father and tried to kill you 3 years ago doesn't deserve anyone's loyalty. And because keeping the current power structure stable is more profitable than the chaos Victor would bring. Lena spoke up. What does he want with me? Roman turned his attention to her, and his eyes were not unkind. Your leverage, the way to Damien's weakness. Victor knows that Damien won't move against him without proof because of the war it would start. But if Victor can provoke Damien into acting emotionally, into making a mistake out of fear for you, then Damien loses the moral high ground. Other families won't support him. He becomes the aggressor, and Victor becomes the victim defending himself. That's why he's been escalating, Damien said slowly. The ruined deliveries, the following, the threats. He's trying to make me unstable. Precisely. And when you finally snap and come for him, he'll be ready. He's been fortifying his position for weeks, calling in favors, positioning allies. The moment you move against him, he'll paint you as a tyrant who attacks without cause. So what do you suggest? Damien's voice was carefully neutral. We give him what he wants, or rather, we make him think he's getting what he wants. Explain. Roman leaned back, folding his hands. Victor wants you emotional, reactive, making mistakes. So we give him that. We make him think his plan is working. You increase security around Lena, make it obvious you're panicking, maybe even pull back from some business dealings, show weakness. Let him think he's winning. And then he gets confident, makes his real move. When he does, we're ready. We document everything, gather proof, and then we act with the full support of the other families. No war, no chaos, just justice. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Lena could see him calculating, weighing risks, trying to find the trap she was certain existed. What do you get out of this? She asked Roman. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Stability. A debt from Mr. Vescari that I can call in someday. and the satisfaction of watching Victor Salazar get exactly what he deserves. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're going to get. Damien looked at Marco. Thoughts? It's risky. We'd be playing a game where Victor thinks he's winning, which means giving him room to hurt us. But if it works, we end this without starting a war. And if it doesn't work, then we're in the same position we're in now, except Victor's more confident and we've wasted time. Lena watched this exchange, feeling useless. These men were discussing strategy and territory and violence like they were planning a business merger, and she was just the pawn they were trying to protect. "What happens to me in this plan?" she asked. Roman looked at her. "You become very visible, very protected, a symbol of Damien's weakness and his desperation to keep you safe. So I'm bait, in a manner of speaking." "No," Damien said flatly. "Absolutely not." "I didn't ask you," Lena said. "I'm asking him. If I'm bait, what are the actual risks?" Roman didn't sugarcoat it. "Victor might try to kidnap you, or hurt you to prove he can, or use you to draw Damien into a trap. The risks are significant. But I'd have protection. The best we can provide. Which clearly isn't enough if Victor's people can follow me through Brooklyn and deliver messages. That was a calculated risk on Victor's part. He knew we'd be watching. He sent someone disposable, someone who could deliver a message and disappear. Actually taking you? That requires more resources, more exposure. It's a different level of commitment." Lena looked at Damien. He was staring at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Raw fear mixed with something that looked like pride. "Don't do this," he said quietly. "Please. You said you wanted me to be a partner, not a possession. Partners don't sit on the sidelines. This isn't a business negotiation, Lena. This is your life. And it's my life to risk if I choose to." "The hell it is. You think I could live with myself if something happened to you? You think I could—" His voice cracked. "You think I could survive that?" She went to him, took his hands. "Look at me. This doesn't end until we end it. We can hide, we can run, we can play defense forever. Or we can take control of the situation and finish it. There has to be another way. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, every option involves me being in danger. At least this way we're choosing the danger instead of waiting for it to choose us." Marco spoke up. "She's right. Victor's not going to stop. He'll keep pushing until either Damien breaks or someone dies. This way, we control the narrative." Damien pulled away from Lena, pacing the length of the restaurant. She could see him warring with himself, the part that wanted to protect her at all costs fighting with the part that respected her enough to let her make her own choices. Finally, he stopped. "If we do this, she stays at one of my properties. Full security 24/7. No exceptions." "Agreed," Roman said. "And at the first sign of real danger, we pull her out. I don't care if it ruins the whole operation." "Acceptable. And when this is over, you and I are going to have a conversation about what you expect in return for this help." "I look forward to it." Damien turned to Lena. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" She wasn't. Every instinct she had was screaming that this was a terrible idea. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of living in the shadow of someone else's vendetta. "I'm sure." "Then we do it your way." He looked at Roman. "But if she gets hurt because of this plan, there's nowhere in this city you'll be able to hide from me." Roman stood, smoothing his suit. "Understood. I'll be in touch with the details. In the meantime, Mr. Vescari, I suggest you start looking appropriately desperate." He left as quietly as he'd arrived, and the restaurant suddenly felt too empty. "Well," Marco said into the silence, "that was fun." "Shut up, Marco." "Just saying, Russian mob, elaborate stings, using your girlfriend as bait. It's like a bad movie." "I said shut up." Marco grinned and left them alone. Lena and Damien stood in the middle of her restaurant, the morning sun streaming through the windows, the city waking up around them. Everything looked normal, ordinary, like the world wasn't slowly tilting toward violence. "I'm terrified," Damien said quietly. "Me too. If anything happens to you, it won't. You can't promise that. Neither can you, but we're doing this anyway." He pulled her close, and they stood there holding each other while the city moved around them, indifferent to their fear. The next 2 weeks were carefully choreographed chaos. Damien moved Lena into a penthouse apartment in Manhattan, top floor of a building he owned, with security that made Fort Knox look casual. He assigned 4 guards to her personal detail, rotating shifts so someone was always watching. He had her followed everywhere she went, obviously, ostentatiously, making it clear to anyone watching that he was panicking. The restaurant stayed open, but now with visible security. Men in suits stationed at the door, cameras everywhere. The kind of overwhelming presence that made customers nervous and sent a clear message. Damien Vescari was scared. In business meetings, he was distracted, made small mistakes he'd normally never make, snapped at his own people, showed frustration, acted exactly like a man coming apart at the seams because his weakness had been exposed. It was a performance, but it felt real. Because underneath the act, Damien actually was terrified. Lena could see it in the way he held her at night, in the way he checked his phone compulsively, in the way he looked at her sometimes like he was trying to memorize her face. "This is working too well," Marco said one afternoon. They were in Damien's office reviewing intelligence reports. "Victor's people are definitely watching. They've clocked every security change, every visible guard. They think you're losing it." "Good," Damien said. "That's the point." "Yeah, but you're actually losing it. I can tell the difference." "I'm fine." "You're not sleeping. You're barely eating. You look like hell." "I said I'm fine." Lena, sitting in the corner with her laptop, spoke up. "He's right. You're taking this too far." "Really? You're going to lecture me about taking things too far? You're the one who volunteered to be bait. And you're the one who's going to have a heart attack before Victor even makes his move." They glared at each other across the office. Marco, wisely, said nothing. Finally, Damien sighed. "I hate this. I hate pretending to be weak. I hate using you as bait. I hate every second of this plan." "I know, but it's working." "Is it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, we're just waiting for Victor to hurt you and hoping we can stop him in time." "That's exactly what we're doing, and we will stop him." "You have a lot of faith in Roman Kozlov." "I have faith in you. Roman's just the messenger." Marco's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face going serious. "We've got movement. Victor's people just rented a warehouse in Red Hook, 2 blocks from Lena's restaurant. No legitimate business reason for it." "Staging area," Damien said immediately. "He's planning something big." "When?" "Soon. He wouldn't rent a warehouse unless he was ready to move." Lena felt her stomach drop. "What do we do?" "We wait. Let him commit. The moment he acts, Roman's people will document it, and we'll have our proof. And if something goes wrong, then I kill everyone in that warehouse and deal with the consequences." He said it so matter-of-factly that it took Lena a moment to process. This was the other side of Damien, the one she usually didn't see, the one who could make those calculations without flinching. "I need some air," she said, standing abruptly. "You're not going anywhere alone." "Then send someone with me. But I need to get out of this office before I lose my mind." Marco assigned 2 guards to follow her. She took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into the Manhattan afternoon, and just started walking. The guards kept pace, professional and unobtrusive, letting her have the illusion of freedom while making sure she stayed safe. She ended up at a small park, sitting on a bench watching pigeons fight over a discarded sandwich. One of the guards, a woman named Sarah who Lena had actually started to like, sat on the next bench over, giving her space but staying close. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said without looking at her. "Sure. How long have you worked for Damien?" 6 years. Since right after the poisoning." "So you were there. You saw what it did to him." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I saw him almost die. Saw him spend months learning to trust food again, to trust people again. It changed him." "Into what?" "Into someone harder. Someone who trusts less and guards more, but also into someone who values the people he cares about more fiercely than before." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to help you understand why he's so scared right now. You're the first person since the poisoning that he's let this close. The first person who matters enough to be used against him." Lena watched the pigeons. "I'm making his life more complicated. You're making his life worth living. There's a difference." Her phone rang. "Damien." "Where are you?" he asked. "Park on 58th. I needed to think." "About?" "About whether I'm being brave or just stupid." "You're being brave. Stupid would be doing this alone. You're doing it with a small army watching your back." "That's supposed to be reassuring?" "It's supposed to be realistic." She almost smiled. "I'll be back soon." "Take your time." I'm sorry I snapped at you. I'm sorry I called you on your bullshit. No, you're not. No, I'm not. She could hear the smile in his voice when he said goodbye. That night, Damien cooked for her. It was awkward and clumsy. He was competent in the kitchen, but nowhere near her level. But the gesture meant everything. He made a simple pasta, following a recipe on his phone, concentrating so hard on getting it right that he didn't notice when she started crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, alarmed. "Is it bad? I can order something." "It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole ridiculous situation is perfect." "I'm pretty sure it's the opposite of perfect." "I know, but you made me dinner." "No one's made me dinner since my mom died." He set down the spoon and came around the counter, pulling her into his arms. "I love you. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. You changed my life, Lena. Made me remember what it's like to feel something other than anger and fear." "I love you too, which is why I'm doing this, why I'm staying. Not because I'm brave or stupid, but because you're worth fighting for." They ate dinner together, and for a little while, they pretended they were just a normal couple having a normal evening in a normal apartment. Not a crime lord and a chef plotting to take down a mutual enemy. Just two people who loved each other, trying to make it work. 3 days later, everything went to hell. Lena was at the restaurant prepping for dinner service when Marco burst through the door. "We need to move. Now." "What happened?" "Victor's people are moving on the restaurant. 2 SUVs, at least 8 men, heading this way. We've got maybe 5 minutes. Lena's training kicked in. She grabbed her knife roll, muscle memory from years of never leaving her tools behind, and let Marco hustle her toward the back exit. Tommy was already there with the car running. "Where's Damien?" she asked. "Handling it. Get in the car." She got in. Tommy peeled out of the alley, taking corners too fast, weaving through traffic like he was running from the law. Sarah was in the passenger seat, phone to her ear, coordinating something. "They're hitting the restaurant," she said. "Just smashed through the front door. Jesus, they brought sledgehammers." Lena's heart broke. Her restaurant. Her beautiful restaurant that she'd built from nothing, that represented everything she'd worked for. And Victor Salazar's people were destroying it. "Are we getting video?" Marco asked from the other car. Lena could hear him through Sarah's phone. "Every angle. Roman's people are documenting everything." "Good. Let them destroy it. We need this." They're in the kitchen now, breaking equipment, smashing plates. One of them just threw a chair through the window. Lena squeezed her eyes shut. She wanted to scream, to cry, to make Tommy turn the car around so she could fight these bastards herself. But she knew that was exactly what Victor wanted. He wanted her emotional, wanted Damien reactive, wanted to provoke them into making a mistake. So she sat in the back of the car and let them destroy her dream while cameras recorded every second. They took her to a different safe house, this one in New Jersey. She sat in the living room watching news coverage of her restaurant, the shattered windows, the destroyed interior, the statement from NYPD that they were investigating the vandalism. Damien arrived an hour later, and the look on his face was murder. "I'm going to kill him," he said without preamble. "I'm going to kill Victor Salazar and everyone who was in that restaurant tonight." "You can't," Marco said. "Not yet. We need... I don't care what we need. He crossed a line." "Damien," Lena stood up, "look at me." He did, and she could see he was barely holding it together. "This is what he wants. He wants you angry enough to act without thinking. We stick to the plan." "The plan is taking too long. People I care about are getting hurt." "I'm fine. The restaurant can be rebuilt. What we can't rebuild is your position if you start a war." "She's right," Roman Kozlov said from the doorway. Everyone spun around. Lena hadn't even heard him enter. "How did you get in here?" Marco demanded, hand moving toward his weapon. "I own the building. I have keys." Roman moved into the room like he belonged there. "We have what we need. Video of the attack, testimony from witnesses who'll swear they saw Victor's people, phone records showing coordination. It's enough." "Enough for what?" Damien asked. "Enough to bring to the council. The other family heads. We show them the evidence. We make the case that Victor Salazar has become a threat to the established order. They authorize action, and you move against him with the full support of the organization." "When?" "Tomorrow night. I've already called the meeting." Damien looked at Lena. "This is it. Once we move, there's no going back." "I know. People are going to die. I know that too." He pulled her close, and she felt him shaking. Not with fear, with rage barely contained. "I'm sorry about your restaurant," he said quietly. "We'll rebuild it, together." "Promise?" "I promise." The meeting happened in a warehouse in Queens, neutral territory where none of the families had an advantage. Damien insisted Lena stay in New Jersey, safely away from whatever was about to happen. She insisted on coming, and after a tense argument that Marco had to mediate, they compromised. She could come, but would stay in the car with armed guards while Damien went inside. They arrived to find a dozen other vehicles already there. Men in expensive suits moving through the shadows, everyone armed, everyone tense. This was the criminal elite of New York, gathered to judge one of their own. "Wait here," Damien said. "No matter what happens, you stay in this car. Understood?" "Understood." He kissed her hard, then disappeared into the warehouse with Marco and 3 other men. Lena sat in the back of the SUV between Sarah and Tommy, watching the entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. The culmination of weeks of fear and planning and risk. In the next hour, they would either end this or make it infinitely worse. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Lena was about to climb out of her skin when Sarah's radio crackled. "Package is moving," a voice said. "South exit, 3 men, armed." "That's Victor," Sarah said. "He's running." "Should we—" "No. We stay put." Marco's orders. But Lena was already reaching for the door handle, because through the warehouse's dirty windows, she could see figures moving, could see what looked like a fight breaking out. "Lena, don't—" She was out of the car before Sarah could finish. Tommy swore and followed, Sarah right behind him. They ran toward the warehouse, and Lena knew this was stupid, knew she was doing exactly what she'd promised not to do. She didn't care. Inside was chaos. Men fighting, gunshots echoing off concrete. Someone grabbed her arm, Tommy, pulling her back toward cover, but she'd already seen what she needed to see. Damien, in the center of it all, facing Victor Salazar. They were both armed, both bleeding from somewhere. Both looked like they wanted nothing more than to kill each other. "Damien!" Lena screamed. His head turned just for a second, just long enough. Victor raised his gun. Everything happened in slow motion and too fast at the same time. Lena saw the weapon, saw Victor's finger on the trigger, saw Damien's eyes widen as he realized he was out of position. Then Marco was there, stepping between them, taking the bullet that was meant for Damien. He went down hard. Damien's roar was inhuman. He fired 3 times, and Victor Salazar dropped, dead before he hit the ground. The warehouse went silent. Lena ran to where Marco had fallen. He was still breathing, clutching his chest, blood spreading across his shirt. "Call an ambulance!" she screamed. Damien was beside her, pressing his hands over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Marco, stay with me. Come on, you stubborn bastard, stay with me." "Did I get him?" Marco asked, his voice weak. "He's dead. You got him." "Good." Marco's eyes found Lena. "Told you. We'd keep you safe." "Don't you dare die on me," Lena said, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you dare." "Wasn't planning on it. Boss would kill me." The ambulance arrived within minutes. Roman must have had them standing by. They loaded Marco onto a stretcher, and Damien rode with him, leaving Lena standing in a warehouse full of criminals and corpses, covered in someone else's blood. Roman approached her. "You should go. The police will be here soon, and you don't want to be part of this scene." "Is it over?" "Victor's dead. His people will scatter or pledge to other families. The threat to you is eliminated." He paused. "Though I suspect you've made yourself a different kind of target tonight." "What do you mean?" "You ran into a firefight to save the man you love. That kind of loyalty gets noticed in our world, gets remembered." "I don't want to be remembered. I just want to go home." "Then go. My people will make sure there's no connection between you and tonight's events." Sarah and Tommy escorted her to a different car, drove her back to New Jersey. Lena sat in silence, replaying everything, seeing Marco fall over and over again. Damien called 4 hours later. "He's stable. Surgery went well. He's going to make it." Lena started crying. "Thank you. Thank you." "I'm the one who should be thanking you. If you hadn't screamed, if I hadn't turned, Marco wouldn't have had time to react. You saved my life. I nearly got you killed. You saved me, Lena, in more ways than one." She could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "Come home." "I will. Few more things to handle here, then I'm all yours." "Lena?" Yeah? I love you, and I'm sorry for all of it. I love you too, and we're going to be okay. We're going to rebuild the restaurant, and Marco's going to recover, and we're going to be okay. She wasn't sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. Damien came home at dawn, covered in other people's blood and exhaustion so deep it had carved new lines into his face. Lena met him at the door, and they stood there holding each other without speaking, because sometimes words weren't big enough to hold what needed to be said. Marco's asking for you, he finally said against her hair. When can I see him? Tomorrow. He's sedated now, but the doctors say he'll be awake by afternoon. They showered together, washing away the physical evidence of the night, even though the emotional weight would take longer to scrub clean. Lena watched the water run pink around their feet and thought about how quickly everything had changed. 3 months ago, she'd been serving pasta from a cart, worried about permits and profit margins. Now she was standing in a shower with a man who'd killed someone tonight, and the craziest part was that she didn't want to be anywhere else. Tell me what happened, she said. After I left. Damien was quiet for a long moment, water streaming over his shoulders. The council saw the evidence, watched the videos of Victor's people destroying your restaurant, listened to testimony from witnesses, reviewed the phone records. It was unanimous. Victor Salazar had violated the peace, and action was authorized. So you were justified. According to their laws, yes. According to actual law, I killed a man in front of a dozen witnesses. Will there be consequences? Roman's handling it. He has contacts in the police department, the DA's office. The official story will be that Victor died in a dispute between rival organizations, no witnesses willing to cooperate. Case closed. That's it? He just disappears from the record? That's how this world works, Lena. People like Victor, people like me, we exist in the spaces between what's legal and what's real. We make our own rules, enforce our own justice. She turned to face him. Does that bother you? It used to. Now it's just what is. I stopped trying to reconcile the two versions of myself a long time ago. The man who takes his girlfriend to breakfast diners and the man who kills his enemies in warehouses. They're both me. And you're okay with that? I'm learning to be. You help with that. When I'm with you, the violence feels further away. Like maybe there's a version of my life that's more than just survival and territory and blood. Lena reached up and touched his face, tracing the new bruise forming along his jaw. There is. We'll build it together. They went to bed and didn't sleep, just held each other while the sun came up over New Jersey and the world kept turning despite everything that had happened. The next afternoon, they visited Marco in the hospital. He was awake, groggy from painkillers, but alive and complaining about the food, which Lena took as a good sign. You look like hell, he told Damien. You got shot. I think I'm allowed to look like hell. Fair point. Marco's eyes shifted to Lena. You saved his life, you know, screaming like that. I nearly got him killed by distracting him. Nah, you gave me the 2 seconds I needed to see Victor's weapon and react. If you hadn't screamed, Damien would have kept his focus on Victor's face, not his hands. I wouldn't have seen it coming in time. Lena felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Thank you for what you did. Just doing my job. Your job doesn't include taking bullets for the boss. Sure it does. That's exactly what the job is. Damien gripped Marco's shoulder. You're getting a raise. And a vacation. Somewhere tropical. All expenses paid. Can't go on vacation. Who's going to keep you from doing something stupid? I'll manage. That's what I'm afraid of. They stayed for an hour until the nurses kicked them out so Marco could rest. In the hallway, Damien leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He almost died because of me, he said quietly. He almost died because Victor Salazar was a psychopath who tried to murder you. Don't take that on yourself. Everything that happens in my world is on me. That's how it works. Then it works wrong. He opened his eyes and looked at her. You're not going to let me wallow, are you? Not even a little bit. Come on, we have work to do. The restaurant was worse than the news coverage had shown. They'd destroyed everything, smashed every plate, bent every pot, shattered the windows, spray-painted obscenities across the walls. The kitchen equipment that had cost Lena months of loan payments was twisted metal and broken dreams. She stood in the middle of the wreckage and tried not to cry. We'll rebuild, Damien said. Better than before. Whatever you want, whatever you need. I want to do it myself. Lena, I know you want to help. I know you think throwing money at it will fix things. But I need to rebuild this place with my own hands, the same way I built it the first time. Not because I don't trust you, but because I need to prove to myself that Victor didn't break me." Damien looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded. "Okay, what do you need from me? Time, patience, and maybe help moving the heavy stuff when I ask for it." "I can do that." They spent the rest of the day sorting through the damage, separating what could be salvaged from what needed to be thrown out. It was depressing work, but also therapeutic in a strange way. Every broken plate they swept up was a piece of Victor's legacy being erased. Every bent pot was evidence that he'd failed to destroy what really mattered. Maria showed up around sunset with pizza and beer. "Figured you could use some food," she said, picking her way through the debris. "Jesus, Lena, they really did a number on this place." "We'll fix it." "How? The insurance? We'll cover some of it. The rest, I'll figure out." Lena cracked open a beer. "I'm not letting this place die because some asshole with a grudge threw a tantrum." "That's my girl." Maria looked at Damien. "You. We need to talk." "Should I be worried?" "Probably. Come outside." Lena watched them go, curious but trusting Maria to say whatever needed to be said. Through the broken window, she could see them on the sidewalk, Maria jabbing her finger at Damien's chest, Damien taking it with the patience of someone who knew he deserved it. When they came back 20 minutes later, they both looked lighter somehow. "What did you say to him?" Lena asked after Damien had left to take a call. "That if he ever puts you in danger like that again, I'll kill him myself. And that I'm glad he loves you, because you deserve someone who looks at you the way he does." "You threatened him and gave him your blessing?" "I'm a multitasker." They worked into the night, the three of them plus Tommy and Sarah, who'd shown up without being asked. By midnight, they'd cleared enough debris that Lena could actually see the bones of what the restaurant had been. It was damaged, but not destroyed. The foundation was still solid. "It's going to be beautiful," Sarah said, surveying the space. "Better than before." "From your mouth to whoever's listening," Lena said. The rebuild took 6 weeks. Lena threw herself into it with an intensity that worried everyone around her, working 18-hour days, refusing to rest until her body literally gave out. Damien tried to make her slow down, but she couldn't. If she stopped moving, she'd start thinking about everything that had happened. The fear, the violence, Marco bleeding out on a warehouse floor. As long as she kept working, she could outrun those thoughts. The insurance money came through, less than she'd hoped, but more than she'd feared. Damien contributed despite her protests, framing it as an investment in the business rather than a gift, which was the only way she'd accept it. Maria organized a community fundraiser that brought in small donations from regulars and neighbors who wanted to see the restaurant succeed. Even Roman Kozlov sent money, though Lena suspected that was less about supporting her and more about maintaining his alliance with Damien. Slowly, the restaurant came back to life. New equipment arrived. The walls got repaired and repainted. The windows were replaced with glass so clean it looked like air. Lena redesigned the kitchen layout, making it more efficient, incorporating things she'd learned from 6 months of operation. It was the same restaurant, but better, stronger. Marco was released from the hospital after 2 weeks and immediately insisted on coming back to work, against everyone's advice. He couldn't do physical labor yet, but he could sit at the bar and bark orders, which he did with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been going stir-crazy in recovery. "You should be resting," Lena told him for the 100th time. "I am resting. I'm sitting down, aren't I?" "You know what I mean. If I spend one more day in my apartment watching daytime television, I'm going to shoot myself. And I've already been shot once this month. That's my limit." Damien visited every day, sometimes helping with construction, sometimes just sitting with Lena during her rare breaks. They were different now, both of them. The violence had stripped away pretense, left them raw and honest in ways that were uncomfortable and necessary. "I've been thinking," Damien said one afternoon. They were sitting on the floor of the unfinished dining room, eating sandwiches from the deli down the street. "About what comes after this? After the restaurant opens? After all of it, the business, the territory, the constant managing of threats. I've spent my entire adult life building an empire. And for what? So I can die young like my father? So I can spend every day waiting for the next Victor Salazar to make his move?" Lena set down her sandwich. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want out. Not immediately. I have responsibilities, people who depend on me. But eventually. I want to transition to legitimate businesses, step away from the parts of my life that require hurting people. Is that even possible? I don't know. Roman thinks so. He's done it himself mostly, still has fingers in the old world, but his primary income is legal now. It takes time, careful planning, and the right partnerships. But it's possible. And you want this because I want a life with you that doesn't involve safe houses and bodyguards. Because I want to take you to dinner without calculating exit routes. Because I want to build something that lasts instead of just surviving until the next threat. Lena's throat tightened. That's a big change. I know, and it won't happen overnight, but I need you to know I'm working toward it, that the man you fell in love with isn't going to stay in this world forever. I fell in love with you knowing exactly what world you were in. You don't have to change for me. I'm not changing for you. I'm changing for us. For the future we could have if I'm smart enough and lucky enough to make it happen. She kissed him, tasting hope and fear and possibility. Then let's make it happen. The restaurant reopened on a Saturday night in early spring, 6 weeks after Victor's people had destroyed it. Lena had insisted on a soft opening, just friends and family, people who'd supported her through everything. The dining room was packed with familiar faces. Maria and her boyfriend, Marco, looking thinner but alive, Tommy and Sarah, and the rest of Damien's inner circle, who'd become strange friends. Even Roman Kozlov showed up, sitting in the corner like a benevolent godfather. Lena had designed a special menu for the night, dishes that represented every stage of her journey. The lemon pasta that had started everything, a more complex version of her aglio e olio, new creations she'd developed during the rebuild, born from anger and determination and the refusal to let violence define her. She worked the line herself, moving through the rhythms she'd perfected over years, finding peace in the familiar motions. Damien sat at the bar where he could watch her work, eating slowly, savoring every bite in a way that still made her heart ache. Around 9, Marco stood up and clinked his glass, demanding everyone's attention. "Speech," someone called. "I'm not making a speech. I got shot. I've earned the right to skip speeches, but I do want to say something." He looked at Lena. 3 months ago, this restaurant was just a building. Now it's proof that some things can't be destroyed, not by violence, not by fear, not by men who think power means they can take whatever they want. Lena built this place twice, and it's better the second time. So here's to stubbornness, to resilience, and to the best damn pasta in Brooklyn. Everyone raised their glasses. Lena felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. Damien came into the kitchen as she was plating desserts. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Tired, happy, terrified this is all going to fall apart again." "It won't. Victor's gone. His organization is scattered, and no one else is stupid enough to come after you." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise that if they try, they'll regret it." She set down the plate she was working on and turned to face him. "I need to tell you something." His face went serious. "Okay. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens, whatever new threats show up, whatever complications come from your world bleeding into mine, I'm staying. I choose this. I choose you. I choose us, with all the mess and danger and impossibility that comes with it. Lena, I'm not done. I also need you to know that I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to become someone who needs protecting or who lives in your shadow. I built this restaurant twice, and I'll build it 100 more times if I have to. I'm strong enough to stand beside you, not behind you." Damien pulled her close, and she felt him trembling. "I know you are. That's why I love you." "Good. Because I'm going to hold you to that transition plan. I want the version of our future where we're just two people who love each other, not a crime boss and the chef he's protecting. We'll get there. I promise." They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the dinner service continued around them, proof that some things, love, resilience, really good pasta, could survive anything. The months that followed were the hardest and best of Lena's life. The restaurant found its rhythm, building a reputation that had nothing to do with Damien's name and everything to do with Lena's skill. Critics came and wrote glowing reviews. Lines formed down the block. She hired more staff, including a sous chef she trusted enough to occasionally take a day off. Damien was true to his word about transitioning out of the criminal world. It was slow, complicated work, selling off illegal operations, investing in legitimate businesses, carefully navigating relationships with people who didn't want to see the power structure change. Roman helped, providing both advice and cover, though Lena suspected he was also positioning himself to fill the vacuum Damien would leave behind. Marco recovered fully, though he walked with a slight limp now and had a scar across his chest that he showed off at parties. He stayed on as Damien's head of security, but the job became less about violence and more about logistics as Damien's world shifted toward legitimacy. Lena and Damien found a rhythm too. Thursday lunches continued, but now they also had Sunday dinners at her apartment, morning runs through Prospect Park, quiet evenings where they didn't talk about territory or threats or the complicated calculus of transitioning between worlds. They learned to be a normal couple, or as normal as they could be given where they'd started. 1 year after the restaurant reopened, Damien took Lena back to the diner in Queens where they'd had their first real date. Rose greeted them like family, ushered them to the same corner booth, brought coffee without asking. "You two look good," she said. "Happy." "We're working on it," Lena said. After Rose left, Damien reached across the table and took Lena's hand. "I have something for you." "If it's flowers again, I'm leaving," he smiled. "Not flowers." He pulled out a small box. Lena's heart stopped. "Damien, before you panic, it's not what you think." "Well, it is what you think, but also not exactly." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band. "This is a promise, not a proposal. I know you'd probably say no if I asked right now because you think it's too soon, and you're probably right. But this is a promise that I'm going to ask someday, when the time is right, when we've built the life we're working toward." "That's the most awkward non-proposal I've ever heard." "I know. I'm better at threats than romance." Lena laughed, wiping away tears. "You're an idiot." "Is that a yes?" "It's a we'll see. Ask me again when you've been fully legitimate for 6 months and haven't threatened anyone's life for at least 3. "That's fair." He slipped the ring on her finger anyway, and it fit perfectly, which made her cry harder. They ate pancakes and made plans for a future that felt possible in a way it hadn't before. Not perfect. Nothing about their lives would ever be perfect, but real and solid and theirs. 2 years after that first bowl of lemon pasta, Lena's restaurant had evolved into something she'd never imagined. Not just a neighborhood spot, but a destination, the kind of place food writers traveled for, the kind of success that came from talent and hard work and refusing to compromise. Damien had successfully transitioned most of his holdings to legitimate businesses, real estate development, restaurants, import-export companies that actually imported and exported legal goods. He still had connections to the old world, still attended meetings, and maintained relationships, but the violence had largely ended. He slept better, ate better, looked less like a man waiting to die and more like someone building toward something. Marco had started dating Sarah, which delighted everyone. They made an odd couple, the gruff security chief and the quiet bodyguard, but they were happy, and happiness was contagious. Roman Kozlov had filled the power vacuum Damien left behind, becoming the de facto authority in the criminal organization. He and Damien maintained a careful partnership, each respecting the other's territory, occasional allies when situations demanded it. On a Thursday afternoon in late autumn, Damien came to the restaurant for lunch as always. But this time, when Lena brought out his lemon pasta, she found him on one knee beside the table. "You said to ask when I'd been fully legitimate for 6 months," he said. "It's been 8, and I haven't threatened anyone in at least 4, though Marco claims the guy in the parking dispute doesn't count because I didn't actually say I'd hurt him, just that he should move his car." Lena's hand shook as she set down the pasta. "Damien, I love you. You saved my life, not just the screaming in the warehouse, but every day before and after. You taught me how to eat without fear, how to trust again, how to be human instead of just powerful. I want to spend the rest of my life eating your cooking and arguing with you and building something that lasts. So Lena Vale, will you marry me?" The restaurant had gone silent. Her entire staff was watching, along with the lunch crowd, everyone holding their breath. "You're doing this here? In front of everyone?" "You fell in love with me at this restaurant," seemed appropriate. "I fell in love with you at a food cart." Semantics. She wanted to make him sweat, to drag this out, to be difficult just because she could. But the look on his face, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified, undid her completely. "Yes," she said, "but I'm keeping my name, and this restaurant stays mine. And if you ever try to solve my problems without asking, I reserve the right to poison your pasta. All reasonable terms. He stood and kissed her while the restaurant erupted in applause. The ring he slipped on her finger was perfect. Simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. Exactly what she would have chosen if he'd asked. Marco stood up in the back, whistling loud enough to hurt ears. Sarah was crying. Maria, who'd snuck in specifically for this, was filming the whole thing on her phone. Speech, someone called. Absolutely not, Lena said. I have a lunch service to finish. Everyone eat your food before it gets cold. But she was smiling, and Damien was smiling, and for the first time in years, the future felt like something to move toward instead of something to survive. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the restaurant, surrounded by the people who'd helped them survive everything. No big production, no society wedding, just two people who'd found each other in the mess and decided to stay. Marco officiated using the online ordination he'd gotten specifically for this purpose. His speech was short and perfect. These two are proof that love isn't clean or simple or safe. It's choosing someone anyway, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Roman Kozlov attended, sitting in the back with a small smile that suggested he knew something they didn't. He gave them a wedding present in an unmarked envelope. The deed to the building the restaurant occupied transferred into Lena's name, no strings attached. Consider it a thank you, he said, for keeping Damien stable during a difficult transition. A happy Damien is good for business. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard, Lena said dryly. I'm a businessman, not a poet. Funny, I've said the same thing. Maria gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Tommy and Sarah announced they were moving in together. The food was incredible because Lena had cooked most of it herself, refusing to trust anyone else with her wedding meal. At the end of the night, Lena and Damien stood in the kitchen, her domain, the place where everything had started and continued and would keep going. We did it, she said. Did what? Survived. Built something that lasted. Proved that violence doesn't get the last word. Damien pulled her close, and they swayed to music only they could hear. You did that. I just followed your lead. Liar. We did it together. Together sounds good. They stayed in the kitchen long after everyone left, washing dishes and putting away chairs and talking about everything and nothing. The restaurant would open again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day forward. Damien's businesses would continue growing, becoming more legitimate with each passing year. Marco would keep watching their backs even though the threats had mostly faded. Life would continue, complicated and imperfect and absolutely worth fighting for. Because that was the thing about love and resilience and really good pasta, they couldn't fix everything, couldn't erase trauma or undo violence or make the world safe. But they could create spaces where healing was possible, where fear didn't have to be permanent, where two broken people could build something whole. Lena had learned this from her mother, had carried it through grief and struggle and her own small empire built on a food cart. She'd taught it to Damien, one meal at a time, until he remembered how to trust food and comfort in the hands of someone who loved him. And in return, Damien had taught her that accepting help wasn't weakness, that love could exist alongside independence. That partnership meant standing beside someone through the darkness instead of pretending it didn't exist. They'd both learned that peace wasn't the absence of danger. It was the choice to keep building despite it, to keep feeding each other, to keep showing up day after day even when it was hard. 3 years after that first Thursday lunch, Lena's restaurant had expanded to a second location. 5 years after, she'd published a cookbook. 7 years after, she and Damien bought a house in Brooklyn with a garden where they grew vegetables and herbs, where the biggest threat was aphids on the tomatoes, and the loudest arguments were about whose turn it was to do dishes. Damien had transitioned fully out of the criminal world by then, though he maintained friendships with people still in it. He'd become a different kind of powerful, the kind that came from legitimate success, from businesses built on actual value instead of fear. He still had bad days, still struggled sometimes with eating, still woke up from nightmares about poisoning and warehouses and people he'd lost. But he also had good days. Days where he ate 3 full meals without thinking twice. Days where he laughed until his stomach hurt. Days where he looked at Lena and felt something other than fear or anger, felt joy, felt peace, felt lucky. They built a life that looked nothing like where they'd started. Not perfect, not without scars, not immune to new problems and complications. But theirs, built with their own hands from wreckage and determination and the stubborn refusal to let darkness win. And every Thursday, without fail, Damien came to the restaurant for lunch. And every Thursday, Lena made him lemon pasta. And every Thursday, he ate it slowly, savoring every bite, remembering what it felt like when food first stopped hurting and started tasting like home. Because some things, the important things, didn't need to change. Some rituals were worth keeping, some promises worth maintaining, some love worth fighting for, no matter how complicated it got. They'd learned that together, one meal at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time, to keep building instead of breaking. And in the end, that was enough.